Today we're making my Southern style banana pudding from scratch. It's made with from scratch vanilla pudding, from scratch whipped cream, and my sourdough vanilla wafers. That's right, even those are from scratch. Let's go make it. This recipe will remind you of the banana pudding found in many restaurants, especially barbecue restaurants here in Middle Tennessee or across the South. It is absolutely delicious. It's simple to make. I wanted to make it from scratch to be a little bit more wholesome. The cookies are even from scratch, so you don't need anything store-bought. I'm so excited to show you how to make this one. You can find my full written recipe linked down in the description below. Just click that link and it will take you over to my blog where you can print and save the recipe at any time. I also have tons of storage ideas and serving tips over there. Now, before we get started, you'll want to make sure you have a batch of homemade sourdough vanilla wafers made. So if you don't know how to make these, I'll show you right now. You're gonna need a large mixing bowl, and you can use a stand mixer or a hand mixer. Now, if you don't have an electric mixer of any kind, you could also just use a handheld whisk. That works just fine as well. So we're first gonna add in 8 tablespoons of melted butter. Now, I like to do a salted melted stick butter, or a salted stick butter that I melt on the stovetop in a little pan. Now, as you've noticed, we are already starting out with a melted butter. Most cookie recipes use a softened butter rather than melted. I have tried both when I was developing this recipe, and I like using the melted butter so much better. So that's why we're using melted today in this recipe. And then we're also gonna add in 1/3 of a cup of pure cane sugar. I just like using that as a much more wholesome option for a sweetener. You're not using a refined white sugar, but instead you get to use a wholesome pure cane sugar. And then we're just gonna mix this together for about 1 to 2 minutes. Next, we're gonna add in 1 large egg, and then we're just gonna mix that with our mixer until it's completely combined. Next, we'll add in 1/2 teaspoon of sea salt, as well as 2 tablespoons of sourdough discard. Now, you could use fed starter if you would like, but discard works just fine. Next, we're gonna add in 1 tablespoon of pure vanilla extract. Now, you wanna make sure you use a good vanilla extract. I actually like the Walmart Great Value pure vanilla extract the best. It's a very budget-friendly, wholesome option. The only thing I do not recommend is using an imitation vanilla. Do not use that. I recommend pure vanilla extract for that delicious flavor. So we're just gonna add in 1 tablespoon of that. And finally, we'll add in 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. Now, I just like to use an aluminum-free one for a more wholesome option. And then we're just gonna mix this until it's all combined. Next, we're gonna add in 1½ cups of all-purpose flour, a little bit at a time. That way it doesn't make a big dust cloud. Just gonna mix a little bit in and then add the rest. And we're just gonna mix this till all the flour is combined in our dough. Make sure you're scraping down the sides of your bowl as well as you're going. And this is what your dough should look like. It should be sticky, but also, as you can see, it's coming off of my hands. Now, if your dough looks different than this, that just means your sourdough starter is either less or more hydrated than mine. So as always, when you're using sourdough in anything, you might have a slight variation. Now, this next step, we are going to chill the dough. Do not skip this step. I cannot say that enough. Do not skip this step. This dough needs to firm up a little bit, so you can pop it in the fridge for 30 minutes or in the freezer for 10 minutes. I'm gonna pop it in the freezer for 10 minutes, then I'll meet you right back here. I forgot to mention, you can also just leave it in the refrigerator covered with an airtight lid for up to 24 to 48 hours until you're ready to bake with it. So if you wanna give it a little more time or you want more fermentation benefits where the sourdough cultures ferment all the other ingredients, just let it sit in your fridge cold for 12 to 24 hours, so 1 to 2 days before you bake it. Now, while we're waiting for our dough to chill, you can preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and line 1 to 2 baking sheet pans with parchment paper. Now, once our dough has chilled, we are gonna grab a spoon. So this is just a regular spoon that you eat with. So you're gonna grab that and we're just gonna scoop out 1 spoonful. So it should look like this. After you scooped out a spoonful, you don't wanna make it like super heaping, but just once you have a spoonful, you're gonna put it in your hand. And then we're just gonna roll this into a bowl. I've tried shaping these a few different ways, and this is my favorite. So once you get it rolled in a bowl, so it'll look like this. Now, once you have it rolled in your hands, you're gonna take your hands and we're just going to flatten it just ever so slightly. So just like that. As you can see, it's just like a little wafer. So then after you have it flattened, we're gonna place it on our sheet pan. You wanna make sure when we're putting them on here that they're about 1 inch apart. And then we're just gonna repeat that same thing, scooping, rolling, and pressing, placing on our sheet pan until all of our dough is used up. Now, depending on how much you scoop for each cookie, they're gonna vary in size, which is completely fine. That's why they're homemade, they're not perfect. When you're done shaping the cookies, you should have about 30 to 32, and then whenever you're ready, you can pop them in your preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and we're gonna bake these for 12 to 14 minutes until they're slightly golden brown on the bottom. Now, when they come out of the oven, they're going to be a little bit soft, but they do firm up once they cool down. When they come out of the oven, place them on a cooling rack off the sheet pan so they don't continue to bake, and then you can enjoy them whenever you're ready. Also, you can watch the full video tutorial for this recipe here on the YouTube channel, and you can find the recipe link down in the description below. I highly recommend using homemade vanilla wafers rather than store-bought for this recipe because it's a lot more wholesome and it tastes so delicious. Just set them aside and we're gonna get started on the pudding. And one thing about this pudding, we're not using any kind of cornstarch. It's an old-fashioned pudding recipe using flour to thicken it. Now to get started with our from scratch vanilla pudding, we're gonna add in 2 cups of whole milk into this pot. And then we're gonna warm this on a medium-high heat until bubbles start to form around the sides. I'll show you what that means. Our milk is ready. When you see the steam coming off and little tiny bubbles are around the side, they are very, very small. You'll want to pull this off. That's called scalding our milk. You want to scald the milk, but you do not want to scorch it. Boiling means scorching. Scalding is those tiny little bubbles around the edge. So once you've got your milk off to the side, it's off the burner and it's already been scalded, you are now going to make our base. Add 2 egg yolks into a bowl. Save the whites in a little container. You can use those later. You can cook them up or just put them in your freezer. We're gonna add in 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. We are making our custard base for our pudding. 1/3 of a cup of pure cane sugar. This is just a more wholesome option for sugar. 1/4 of a teaspoon of sea salt. You gotta add a little bit of salt to make it have more flavor. And then we're finally gonna add in 3 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. This is what's gonna thicken our pudding while it cooks. Then we're just gonna grab a whisk and we're gonna mix this together until it's evenly combined. It's gonna be kind of like a paste, as you can see. So once you have everything kind of mixed together here, we're gonna take our milk and we're gonna temper our eggs. We do not want cooked eggs in our pudding, so instead we're going to temper the eggs. To do that, it's really simple. Don't let the word scare you. Take a little bit of hot milk. I like to use a ladle, and we're going to pour this into our bowl, and we're just gonna stir this. You don't wanna let it sit, but don't be scared of it. Just give it a stir. This also helps loosen up that base. But what we're doing, we're bringing this egg mixture up. We're tempering it, which means we're bringing it up to a warmer temperature. We're not dropping it all into that hot mixture right away because that would cook our eggs and nobody wants scrambled eggs in their pudding. So once you've got it mixed in, we're gonna just add a little bit more. We're gonna add about 1 cup or half of this milk in here. And then we can safely add it back into our pot. I used to think tempering anything like eggs or a custard base was super hard, but it is not. This is all we're doing. I'm gonna put in just a few more. So this is about half. So once you've got that mixed in there, then we can add our tempered egg mixture into our pot. So while you do this, you just want to make sure you're whisking. And there we go. We have safely added our eggs in without cooking them. Now that we have our egg mixture in here, we're going to turn our heat back to a medium. Now we're going to cook our pudding. So now we're trying to thicken this. So you just want to keep continually to whisk this. You can walk away for just a few moments, but I would not leave this on the stovetop unattended. You want to make sure you're whisking it every now and then so the pudding does not burn on the bottom and it heats evenly. So we're just gonna heat this on a medium heat until it begins to thicken and steam starts to come off the top. This can take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. And as you can see, it's starting to also bubble a little. That's okay. We're gonna cook it for about 2 more minutes here. Once it begins to bubble like this when you leave it, you want to make sure you're whisking continually. You do not want to let this sit at that point because it's warm and it will start to scorch on the bottom. Okay, as you can see now, it is really starting to bubble. That's exactly what we're looking for. This is the thickness that we want. So just like this. And now we're gonna pull this off of our burner and pull it off of the heat so it can set to the side to cool a little. Now, as our pudding cools, it will thicken up a little bit. You can run this through a fine mesh strainer if you would like. If there's a little bit of pieces in there, you're more than welcome to do that to have an even smoother pudding. I've got to give it a try. It smells fantastic. Oh my gosh. It is so good. It's so much better than boxed, but it tastes very similar. Now we're gonna set our pot here on a trivet to just let it slightly cool while we prepare the other items for our banana pudding. Now, while our pudding is just sitting to the side, I've already made my vanilla wafer cookies with sourdough, so those are sitting there. The only thing left is making our homemade whipped cream, so I'm gonna show you how to make that now. And then also we'll need to grab 2 bananas and we're gonna slice those up, and then we can assemble everything and pop it in the fridge. To make our homemade whipped cream, we're gonna start with a mixing bowl. Now, this is a completely optional step, but I like to place my mixing bowl in the freezer for about 10 minutes to get it cold. This just helps whip up the cream a little bit easier. And then we're gonna add in 1 cup of cold, heavy whipping cream. Now, I like to get an organic version that doesn't have all of those additives and thickeners in them. It's just pure cream, but make sure it's not been sitting out. Make sure it comes directly from the fridge. The colder your cream, the easier it is to whip up. We're also gonna add in 2 tablespoons of pure cane sugar. Again, this is just another wholesome option for sugar. And finally, we're gonna add in 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. I don't really recommend the imitation kind, so I do pure. It's a more wholesome option again. So now we're gonna grab a hand mixer, a stand mixer, or you could even use a regular whisk. And we're just gonna turn this on a low-medium speed. We're gonna whip this up until stiff peaks form. So I'll show you what that means. Now, depending on your cream, it will depend on how fast this whips up. So it can take only 2 minutes, or it can take up to 5, maybe even 6. But if it's not whipping up at all after 5 minutes, it's not thickening in any way, shape, or form, you wanna put it in the freezer for about 10 minutes, and that will really help. Now, once everything is mixed together, I like to crank it up to a high speed, and this helps make everything go a little bit faster. Now, when it looks like this, we're getting close. We're gonna turn our mixer off, and then to check if it's stiff peaks, we're just gonna go like this. And then as we can see, there's little ones here. If they're sticking straight out, that means it's a stiff peak. So you can also use your finger. So if it's not falling off and it's a stiff and the peaks are stiff, that means it's ready to go. That is so good. Now that we have our homemade whipped cream done, we have our from scratch vanilla pudding done, our sourdough vanilla wafers are already baked, so now it's time to slice up our bananas and then we can start assembling. Now I want to grab 2 medium to large size ripe bananas. I like to get organic, they just taste a little bit better, but you can use regular as well. And then we're just gonna peel them. They smell so good. I love the smell of bananas. Now we're just gonna grab our knife, and if there's like blackened ends, you can just kind of slice those off quick, or if there's any bruised part of your banana, so kind of like this. Now we're just gonna slice these into about 1/4 of an inch coins. You wanna make sure they're pretty thin, but not too thin where you can't taste them, so just like this. And then we're just gonna repeat that with our other banana. Now that our bananas are all cut up, we are going to start assembling our banana pudding. So I like to use a 7-cup Pyrex glass dish. That's what I like to use, and then it has a lid, so it's easy for storage and it's the perfect size. So you can use this, or you can use any kind of serving dish of your choice. Then we're gonna grab our vanilla wafers, and we're gonna place a layer on the bottom. You can place them face up or face down, completely up to you. Now, this is about half of a batch of my sourdough vanilla wafer recipe. We ate the rest of them, so I'm just using what we have. You'll probably only need about half to 2/3 of a batch. And then if there's spaces like this, you can just break one in half and place it down in there. And then we're gonna grab our bananas, and we're gonna do a layer of bananas on top of our wafers. By adding the bananas after the cookies and then the pudding allows the bananas to be kind of like preserved down in there, because the pudding is going to preserve them and cover them. They help protect the cookies from getting really extra soft and mushy. So once you have a layer like this, you're gonna grab your pudding. Now this is still warm, so don't worry about it, just give it a quick stir. And then we're gonna add a layer of pudding on top. So I usually like to just like drizzle this over, and then I can use my spoon to kind of flatten it out, or spread it out, I should say. You'll want to use about half of the pudding because we're gonna do 2 layers of this. So as you see, I'm just spreading this out. You wanna make sure it covers everything. Once you have your layer of pudding, we're gonna repeat these layers. So we'll grab our cookies again, and we're gonna just lay them down in our pudding. Again, you can break them if you would like. So like, I'm gonna just put this one here. And then I'll put that there. And then I'm just gonna eat this one. That was so good. And then we're gonna grab our bananas and put another layer. And then once you have your banana layer, we're gonna add the last layer of pudding. So we're just gonna use all of this up. And I always like to scrape this. You could even get a spatula out, and that way you get all of the goodies. You don't wanna leave any of the pudding behind or waste any. It's so good. Or you can leave just a little bit in here as a little cook's treat for after you're done preparing it. That's what I'm doing. And then after you have the 2 layers of cookie banana pudding, we're gonna grab all of our whipped cream here, and we're gonna put it all on the top. So you wanna have a thick layer of whipped cream. Now, if you skip the step of making homemade whipped cream, your whipped cream can melt if your pudding did not cool down at all. After you have all of the whipped cream in here, you're just gonna push it to the edges very gently. You don't wanna mix it in or anything. And then once you have your whipped cream on top, you are done. You made your homemade Southern banana pudding completely from scratch. Now you can add any extra wafer cookies on top. You can put them on top, or you can crumble them and put the crumbles on top. You can also place extra bananas on top. Now I do not recommend this if it's gonna be a few days before you enjoy this, or if you're serving it for a party, because these will turn brown because they are fresh. But look at this thing, it looks amazing. Now once you have this made, you're gonna want to put a lid on it, or you can leave it uncovered if you can't cover your bowl, but you're gonna put this in the fridge for 4 to 8 hours before you eat it. It needs to cool down and set up and allow those vanilla wafers to get almost cake-like from the pudding. It needs to seep in there. So give it 4 hours minimum, up to 8. 24 hours is the best. It makes the best texture, but you do not have to wait that long. 4 to 8 hours is just fine. This will last in your fridge for up to 3 to 4 days. Now, the longer it sits, the more mushy the wafers will get, and the pudding can get a little bit runny just because it's from scratch. So just keep that in mind. But that's how you make this delicious treat. My husband and I love banana pudding in the summer. We get it all the time at barbecue restaurants, but now we have it at home, and I know we're gonna make it all the time this summer. You can serve this for Mother's Day, Father's Day. You could serve it for the 4th of July, and really any event. If you're having a picnic or a cookout or guests coming over, or if you just wanna make this for a holiday, that works too. Or if you're like us, you just wanna make it on a random weeknight or a weekend for a treat. I hope this recipe becomes your new favorite banana pudding recipe made completely from scratch. If you like another from scratch dessert recipe, I'll leave one here or here. I highly recommend checking that one out. But until next time, go serve God by loving your family one recipe at a time.